Hi, my name is Ott Velsberg and I'm the Government Chief Data Officer, and I oversee the strategic coordination of data governance, open data, also data science, and of course our artificial intelligence program in government. Other topics also include human-centric data governance, so empowering people and giving them a chance to decide over how citizen data is used, and also providing means for private sector and research institutions to get access to citizen government health data. So these are just some of the topics. And when it comes to AI, together with the team, we are supporting different government entities in launching different AI systems. For us, AI is different systems that utilize machine learning to some extent. So it is not simply about automating different services, but more in a means of how it's done from a technological perspective. Similarly, we are right now working on government virtual assistant, which is our view of how government should provide public services in future. And the idea in a really simple manner is that all government services should be proactive, they should be personalized, seamless. And a citizen and a company or business should be able to interact with the government in using any means necessary for them. So it in the end means that you can contact the government using your phone, talking to the refrigerator, for instance. And if you need to renew your driver's license or passport, or even register your child to kindergarten, or if there's a traffic accident, then the government is really one kind of click away or one command away. So one channel 24/7. This is the vision of the government.
Well, it's a really interesting point that you're making about bringing harmony to citizens to give them easy access to services and solutions. Without giving too much away, because your session when you join us at World Summit on October the 14th, we'll be talking around how you've created the coherent national level AI strategy. Over the course of the last couple of years and throughout COVID, what do you say have been the positives and the negatives that you've learned from in terms of bringing that strategy to life?
Mm-hmm. I think it's an awful thing to say, but the COVID crisis has been wonderful for the field I'm leading in the government. It has put in prominence some of the fields that otherwise didn't receive that much attention from the public. For instance, open data. Similarly, we have seen that data science, access to data, data management, they have increased in importance by tenfold. The number of use cases, just 2 years ago, we had only a couple of AI applications in the government. Today, we have already implemented more than 80. So within a really short 2 years period, the interest in using AI has grown tremendously. And this is part to do with the COVID crisis. For instance, we saw an increased interest towards understanding customer intents, customer emotions. What are the most concerning issues that people have? Really digging deeper to understanding how we can improve our public services. And I think it would have happened anyways, but the COVID pushed a little kick and made it a lot faster.
Yeah, COVID has certainly accelerated a lot of adoption and willingness to try something new, which has clearly benefited a number of companies, but also I think put us in good shape, I suppose, to bring new ideas together more quickly so that people who are startups get more traction. In terms of the startup community that you have in Estonia, how would you describe it right now?
So the collaboration with the startup community is actually great. Just a few weeks ago, we also internationally launched our digital testbed framework, and it has really paid off when it comes to using AI as well and implementing AI. So we're typically talking about a possibility to collaborate with the government and test out if the solutions that are right now in the design phase can actually be deployed and if they necessarily bring value as well. And using that as a reference, and the government of Estonia as a potential client has paid off for the startup community as well. So for instance, right now, one of the growing AI startups in Estonia is Faima. And Faima, a few years ago, started a lot in a collaboration with government. We were working together, trying to understand what is the perspective. Today, Faima is operating more internationally, for instance, in the UK, but still, I hope to believe that in some sense, we helped each other grow. And similarly, let's take Texta Toolkit, which is an open source textual analytics platform that the government has supported throughout the years. And today there are around 12 different organizations within the government alone that are using that. So the use of that AI platform is growing tremendously as well, both locally and internationally.
And you mentioned to me that the launch of the sandbox, how and talking about the use of AI, collaboration, and transparency. Can you expand a little bit more on how that's launched, been working, or what the plan is?
Yeah, so we have right now launched the digital testbed framework, and we are collecting proposals on what different organizations want to work on. The transparency itself is another question, and that's a really important question, but it isn't necessarily related to digital testbed itself. And when it comes to transparency, whatever the government finances in terms of AI, then we have made it mandatory that if there are no other pressing issues, then that solution must be open source to everyone. So both for the government and also for the private sector. Mm-hmm. And similarly to, I think one of the most pressing issue when it comes to AI is integrity of data, and how do we assure privacy of the data that we actually process. We have made it mandatory, for instance, to use or to make or carry out the privacy impact assessment. Similarly, all new developments, they have a requirement that personal data tracker is being implemented. And personal data tracker provides you an overview in the government portal of when different government and private entities actually process your data. So it's in a simple manner a log of when the government uses your personal data and for what reason. So it's about transparency of when the government and when the private sector processes private data that is currently held by the government. And similarly related to transparency, we want to give more empowerment to the citizens to decide over when and for what reason government data can be actually used for. So one of the most interesting use cases, I guess, is related to our biobank. In Estonia, roughly 1/5 of the whole population has donated their genome data to our national biobank. And we can basically use it for whatever reasons we see fit. However, we want to give that decision to the people themselves. And it is up to the people to decide if different research institutions can access their data, if the government can access that data to provide, for instance, personalized medicine. Mm-hmm. So based on your genome, whether you should really quit smoking or stop drinking because you are prone to X or Y, and also KYC. So if you want bank loans, I think most of the listeners have gone through that process. It's personal. You need to provide everyone the concrete evidence that how much your salary is, where your money is coming from, and so on. But all that information is already in the government registries. So if you give consent to the company to ask certain data from the government registries, then you can automatically basically ask loan from all banks and get the best deal for you.
So it sounds very much like for want of a better word, a citizen-supported led strategy, which sounds a little bit unique in these times, but it is nonetheless about building trust and advocacy, so that obviously we can harness the power of AI and take it forwards. In terms of then linking together, obviously there's a huge amount of talent in Estonia. In terms of bringing international companies to, I suppose, attack the challenges that you laid down, what's the route in for international companies to collaborate with you?
So the best option is always to contact us. that's the easy part. And when it comes to services, I would just extend what I mentioned before as well. We really try to blur the line between the government and the public sector. And I think this is one of the most pressing issues that I see when it comes to really customer-centric government or citizen-centric government, is that when the public service ends, then we often forget to think about how that life event or how that event actually goes upon for the client. So for instance, if you get to a traffic accident, then the government doesn't need to be involved in terms of police or emergency unit, then typically we would assume that the public service ends there. However, for the citizen, if we take the whole event, then they, in the end, need to contact the banks, they need to get their car fixed and so on. So we need to have a more unified way. And this also means that we need to stop thinking about public services only in terms of government provided, but more in terms of government and private sector assisted services, whereby we unifyingly provide services that make the most, bring most value to the customer. And this also brings upon different potential avenues. For instance, I mentioned the traffic accidents. If the traffic accidents happen, then this would give a potential benefit for the private sector to step in. And if you're able to be integrated in that life event service, then you could have a market competitive advantage in the end.
It's a fascinating angle, and one which I think we could explore in far more detail. But in light of not giving away too much before people can join your session with us at World Summit AI, it would be good just to get your thoughts on, finally, why particularly did the summit attract you as a platform to share your insights?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, one of the strategic pillars for the government AI strategy was collaboration. And collaboration not only with the private sector in Estonia, but also with different governments, different private sector across the globe, also non-governmental organizations. So it's really about collaboration and sharing the experience, what has worked. I'm truly not a fan about keeping all what has worked out to yourself. So if you're able to really improve the society that we are living in, then we should share what has worked. We should share what has not worked, and we should provide the tools and means for everyone. I know this is sometimes goes against some countries' way of operating, whereby they see it as a competitive advantage. But in the end, the world gets more connected by each day. And again, as I mentioned before, we have the digital testbed framework. If you want to develop a new service, you want to try out technologies that have worked out, you want to get access sometimes to data, then we are able to provide the means here. So we have tried and tested set of technologies, we have the data, and we are ready to move forward.
It's a fascinating insight as to where I think the future is going. And I thank you for your time and sharing a little bit of what you'll probably be sharing more of when you join us. So thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you. Talk to you soon.